This episode, we're going to be going over Pikachu's Edgeguarding, arguably his best strength. Pikachu, in my opinion, is the best Edgeguarder in the game for a multitude of reasons, but first, let's break down the goals for Pikachu's Edgeguarding. First off, you need to just kind of innately understand what your opponent can do off stage, whether it's where their airspeed is, how they recover, where they can recover from, what options they have off stage, and being able to keep track of all of that and know which ones your opponent have and have not used, like a double jump, another double jump, a recovery move like a zero suit down B. You have to keep track of all of that to understand where your opponent can be, to know if you can cut them off. Secondly, you want to eliminate those resources, because if your opponent has less resources, like they don't have their double jump, they don't have their good recovery move, then it becomes a lot easier to know exactly where they have to recover, which can allow you immediately to get the stock. And because of Pikachu's amazing off-stage carries in his combo game with back air, up air, back air, you end up forcing your opponent a lot of times, if they have a subpar recovery, into a forced 50-50 of recover high versus recover low. And sometimes it's not even a 50-50, because you can cover low with a back air and then cover high afterwards with a thunder, and your opponent just dies. So this is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be showing you this in a Photoshop document so you can understand the concept of what I'm talking about. So let's just give an example of what can happen. Again, let's say Pikachu forward airs your opponent off stage. They end up being here. Edgeguard is basically understanding the fall and airspeed of your opponents to know the timing of when they get somewhere, and you're just trying to intersect the line. So really quickly, Pikachu's Edgeguarding options are Thunder Jolt, back air, forward air, down air, and thunder for the most part. Those are basically going to be all of them. Of course, you can up air in certain situations, you can do nair drag downs, but those are going to be a little bit more specific to specific characters or very specific situations. So let's go over a very easy example first of Ganondorf. So what do we know? Ganon's airspeed is not particularly good. His fall speed, there's not really a good or bad here, but it's just very easy to hit for Pikachu, and then he does not have extra options when it comes to recovery, so he just has his double jump. He does not have a good recovering down B. Recovery side B is kind of only threatening in like this space, so it's not really something you have to worry about unless they are specifically here, but even then you don't really have to worry about it for a reason I'll get into. So they're just basically going to have a line and then a recovery. So Ganondorf, if he doesn't have a double jump, has to recover like this, basically, and he up Bs, and that's about it. That's all he can basically do. Of course, at any time, the Ganon can double jump, right? So like this dotted line is his double jump line, which means that immediately if a Ganon double jumps here, right, if they're recovering, suddenly this becomes the solid line, and then this line doesn't even exist anymore. But again, in a lot of these situations, Ganon will still have to up B to the ledge, right? Or fall a little bit farther and up B to the ledge. He can also up B high and then try to grab it this way. But again, that's a scary thing to do, because Pikachu has what we call in the business Thunder Jolt. When Pikachu does jump and Thunder Jolt, I'm going to get rid of these lines just for a little bit of a simplicity. He's basically forcing the opponent to deal with an option at this angle. So if the opponent gets hit at any point here, or with the first line that Ganon can do here, he's just dead, right? Because they'll get knocked farther back or farther back, and then in this case, they don't have a double jump, so the up B will not make it back, or you can just follow your Thunder Jolt, and then the Thunder Jolt's going to hit, and then you forward them out, and then they get hit and die. This is the Blast Zone confetti. Or they're just too far to recover, because if they get hit here and they go double jump into up B, they probably won't be able to recover. Of course, in this specific example, they won't. In other examples, you can just shoot another Thunder Jolt, because then they like jump and try to up B, and then you Thunder Jolt them here with your Thunder Jolt, and then it hits them, and then they end up not being able to recover. Thunder Jolt's kind of crazy. So, given this, what does Ganondorf have to do? They have to avoid the Thunder Jolt, which means that if they haven't air dodged at this point, right? So not air dodged, double jumped. Let's say they haven't double jumped yet, so they still technically have this dotted line for their, this dotted line for their double jump. Pretend that's a straight line. I didn't mess this part up. So if they haven't used their double jump yet here, they basically have to, right? They have to double jump here, which makes it a lot simpler for Pikachu to know where the opponent's going to go, and then you just hit them anyway. They can also air dodge down here, technically, like a neutral air dodge, when they start the neutral air dodge like here, and then they can end it like somewhere down here and then maybe do double jump up B perfectly. But again, if you are Pikachu and you're paying attention, you jump Thunder Jolt, and then you fall with your Thunder Jolt. So like Pikachu's body is also here, right? You're just falling with the Thunder Jolt as it's here. If it hits, it combos into forward air. If they air dodge it, you just kind of drift this way and then forward air your opponent here, or down air them if you're close enough. It's just a very good situation for Pikachu. And of course, in a situation where they use their double jump and then you hit them with the forward air, but it's like mid%, so then they just get hit back up here. So you basically forward air to your opponent. They're over here now, but now they don't have a double jump, which means their options are fall and up B. And that's basically it. So again, you either put a Thunder Jolt in this situation, right, with a jump Thunder Jolt, or you just, after the forward air, you grabbed the ledge, right, because you're just recovering, and then you see them falling, or they like directional air dodge to try to just get a little bit more space, right? And then you just, fall off the ledge and back air them in that spot. Because you should know how much lag the directional air dodges have, where they can go. You fall and then back air, but if the opponent even like does this drift and then tries to like drift here instead to try to avoid the back air, you just keep falling and then do double jump back air anyway. So it basically puts your opponent in a lot of no-win situations. And Ganon is one of the simplest examples, so of course it's going to be easy versus him. So let's bump it up in difficulty a little bit and talk about an example like Byleth. In my opinion, Pikachu's really good at dealing with tether recoveries because he has multiple lingering aerials, which are very good versus tethers as they're reeling in. So let's, again, thinking about Byleth, go over fall and airspeed knowledge. So Byleth does not fall particularly fast and also does not have particularly good airspeed. So Byleth isn't going to be moving really fast in the air like a character like Wolf or Roy or Chrom will, right? So where they are is kind of where they're going to be. The opponent's options when they're off stage, you have arrow to stall and to also dissuade someone from edge guarding, but you can just jump and avoid that pretty easily as Pikachu. They have their side B stall, which is important, and then every tether character has their first tether have a little bounce, right? Every single obligate up B tether, Byleth, Ivysaur, Joker, they all have that little bounce, so you have to be ready for that as well. And then of course they have the standard double jump and air dodge. So again, same situation, you put your opponent off stage here, right? Again, their normal fall speed is here. The range of tethers is kind of ridiculous in this game. It's like really, really big. It's quite a large range. Like for this example, I'll just do this type of thing. So you have to be ready for your opponent to tether in basically all of these spaces, and if you can't get there to deal with it, you kind of don't. However, again, Pikachu has a great way of dealing with it, which is just, as I mentioned before, Thunder Jolt. If someone tethers and they reel in, right? So like they up B from here and they reel in, I'm going to use, because this is going to be the character, so it'll be black now. If they reel in, they have to reel in and go through the Thunder Jolt. So if you time the T-Jolt correctly, it'll hit the reel in, and if they don't reel in immediately, they kind of swing down, and then the Thunder Jolt will hit them here, or if they try to reel in here. It's really, really good for Pikachu to just throw out a Thunder Jolt there if you don't have the time to do an aerial. But again, the Byleths should know this, so they're trying to play around it, right? That's the Thunder Jolt line. So we have this here as the Byleth. Again, they have the little up B bounce if they want to use it, if you're jumping off stage to hit them. So they have this, and then they also have, of course, the double jump line, which, is going to be a little bit higher, and that can happen at any point. And I know that's the same color, so I apologize. And then that double jump can happen basically anywhere. And then, of course, they have directional air dodge, neutral air dodge. It is a little bit complex, I'm not going to lie. It's not the easiest thing to deal with, but it's essentially just simplifying edge guarding into lines. And if the Byleth gets in this green range, because that also is like all of this space as well, right? It's not just, it has to be here, it's here and closer to the ledge. That they can up B. However, the up B isn't going to be threatening to you because you can just hit it with a multi-hit aerial. So what you're going to do is basically force the opponent to be uncomfortable in the space outside of this, which you can because of Thunder Jolts, understanding that, like, if your opponent understands how Pikachu works, they'll be hesitant to go in this space if a Thunder Jolt is there, because if they up B and then get hit by the Thunder Jolt, they're basically immediately going to get edge guarded, because tethers also have a little bit of lag. If you hit someone with a tether, they can't immediately up B to the ledge. They have to wait about half a second, and that half a second literally sometimes makes them too far to grab the ledge, especially because they don't have the up B bounce. So they can fall out of this range. Like if they're here and they start their up B, they can fall out of the range before it actually tethers to the ledge, which means that they just die. And of course, because Pikachu's back air sends at a pretty low angle and you also have access to drag downs with back air and forward air, if you hit your opponent as Pikachu with an aerial, it can just spell disaster for the opponent. So again, what you're going to do is, against this character, you kind of want to jump out and T-Jolt a little bit more, because again, a lot of the situations you're not being threatened by a move, so you jump out and Thunder Jolt, which means that the Thunder Jolt's going to be a little bit farther. And the T-Jolt comes out around like here, right? So you as your Pikachu body will be here and then falling with the Thunder Jolt, like you'll be here and the Thunder Jolt will be like a little bit farther in front of you. It's always going to be in front of you, right? So again, what you can do is fall with your Thunder Jolt and basically pressure the opponent. If they don't double jump by the time that the T-Jolt hits them over here or pressures them over here and forces them to air dodge or something, you just combo the T-Jolt into a forward air or a down air depending on the position. If they do double jump, now your opponent basically has a mix-up, right? So let's say again, they were falling and they didn't double jump and they haven't up B bounced yet. So they're falling, they haven't up B bounced, and you have this T-Jolt coming at them and then you're also off stage. So in this position, the opponent will basically have to double jump before this, because if they don't, they'll be sent too far and die just because they can't recover. So they'll probably see the T-Jolt coming and double jump around here. Again, the T-Jolt will probably pass them, right? The T-Jolt will be here, but you will already kind of know they're going to double jump because they have to. And so you, as your body, will probably have seen this and drifted back to avoid a forward air or something like that. And again, you can oftentimes react to the beginning of up B or their double jump, drift backwards like this, see it, and then double jump in forward air, which covers a lot of space. It'll hit the up B startup. If they air dodge, you kind of forward air and then fall and down air and then recover because you're Pikachu and you can recover from basically anywhere. Also, if you're somehow facing backwards already because you like grabbed the ledge instead of going for this Thunder Jolt, you can just put your body here. If your opponent double jumps really early, like double jumps here, you can just kind of jump and thunder, which covers a lot of space. And I know this looks really messy and complicated, but it's kind of just things you have to remember in terms of these little differences and just understanding how to hit the opponents. And I have some examples. Don't worry, this isn't going to be just this theory. I can show you in the games. So as I went over with all those lines, you have to understand what your opponent can do and what options that they've done. So SkyJ tries to get aggressive here against me with the side B. I think he hit me with that earlier in the first game of the set, because I just like double jumped and tried to forward air and he hit me for it. So I see, okay, he side B'd, and then I grab the ledge safely and I see he double jumped. He doesn't have access to side B, so he can up B here or air dodge, and I just try to hit him before he even gets either of them out. He tries to nair, and then I do an up air back air, which is a combo. And again, Incineroar every time he gets hit has access to both side B and up B again. However, he doesn't have a double jump, and that's really important to remember because it makes the lines and the intersecting angles a lot simpler. So up air, back air, I grab the ledge. If Incineroar up B is here, I can drop down and thunder it, so it's a little scary for SkyJ to do that. So he goes for side B. And so I back air the side B. Now he's below the stage and literally can't up B because he will not make it back, which means that SkyJ, in order to recover at all, has to hope that I mess up and go for side B up B. And so then I back air him and drag him down, knowing that Incineroar's vertical recovery isn't the best, and this is literally just a stock. And I killed Incineroar, a pretty heavy character, at 25 because he went for an edge guard and put himself off stage. That's the kind of stuff you gotta work with. So this is a great example of the Byleth stuff that I talked about. It's me versus Leo, which is why I like using Byleth a lot, because I know this example very, very well. I put Leo off stage. He goes for his ledge stall, which he does versus a lot of people, with up B, which, by the way, that's the up B bounce. Remembering the data, remembering what your opponent can do. He uses up B bounce, he doesn't have it anymore. Knowing how Lilat works and Byleth's up air is huge, I'm like, he's probably gonna try to shark under the stage. That's fine. So I just kind of avoid it. I go for a down air just in case he goes a little bit farther to the left, and then I would be able to go down air, forward air him under the stage, and it'd be a little bit hard for him to recover. But again, we have seen Byleth go for the up B bounce, and double jump. So Byleth has no options other than air dodge and just straight up B and hoping to grab the ledge. I end up getting under Byleth, and while I can do double jump back air here, it would hit Byleth very high and I wouldn't be able to continue the edge guard because I would still have to recover, and in the time that I'm recovering, Byleth would be able to tether to the ledge. So what I do here is I go for a double jump up air, which still combos into back air, so then it's a falling back air, which means that my opponent is a lot lower, and basically they can't recover because they don't have a double jump and they don't have their up B bounce. So it is straight up just a kill at like 26. So again, understanding your opponent's options, what they use, how to avoid it, and then putting them in the worst situation possible is literally a stock. So this example of Shiny Mark versus Siski is going to be a longer edgeguard against a character that, as I mentioned in other sections, I think, is pretty hard to edgeguard. Samus's bomb makes her really ambiguous when she's falling, so her lines that I can draw on the Photoshop document are very varied, and it's kind of annoying. I don't like edgeguarding Samus. But Shiny Mark with his patience plays wonderfully. So we've seen already Shiny Mark get a forward air here. You can tell that Siski still has a double jump because you can actually see double jumps if they have a little bit of smoke on them. This is the rage smoke, which is a little different. You have like black trailing lines behind you if you don't have your double jump. So Siski still does have double jump, even though we didn't see it in the context of this clip yet. So then you see that Siski has a tether, and most Samuses will like to tether here, and Shiny Mark just kind of guesses that. Sometimes it's a guess, right? Because Siski technically could have just fallen here, air dodged, and then up B to ledge, but he didn't because he didn't want to get spiked, because it's a little bit easier to hit Samus's up B with Pikachu than you would expect. So he back airs the tether and puts himself back towards the stage because he's not trying to get the optimal distance here, because Samus is going to be annoying over here anyway with bombs and probably stalling and not really going far out, so it doesn't really matter. So Shiny Mark would prefer to just land back on the stage, and he double jumps just in case Siski tries to get aggressive with these bombs, understands, oh, I actually can't get anything because Siski just stayed really high and I can't hit this yet. So then Shiny Mark again jumps back on stage so that he can get access to his first jump and then still double jump, and he hits another tether because Siski is in the range where he can tether. Beautiful by Shiny Mark so far. And then now Siski is a little bit farther out, doesn't have the ability to go for a tether as easily because we've seen already Shiny Mark cover it twice, and so you expect him to get a little bit more aggressive when it comes to the recovery, and then Shiny Mark hits that with a forward air. It doesn't get the final hit, but again, kind of like the Thunderdolls that I talked about, it puts Siski far enough out that it's really, really difficult for him to make it. He would have had to up B here, and Shiny Mark would just be able to hit this with a spike, and that gets Shiny Mark the game. And so this is honestly going to be my favorite example, and I use this in my lessons all the time, which, by the way, if you're wondering how to apply all this, get a lesson as well. It's fun stuff. So I use a Thunder Jolt in neutral to hit Byleth off stage, and I get the very corner back air, which is going to be best case scenario. This is a very, very good situation because this back air combos into up air, which combos into back air. So as we talked about, Byleth is pretty low, has to get into that little bubble that I showed, like the green line bubble, for him to tether, right? And I have to recover here, so I have a little bit of time to see what Leo wants to do and what options he wants to pick to get into that bubble, because he has to do something. So I recover, and I see that he doesn't double jump for a little bit and doesn't air dodge, which means he's going to double jump either really low, which is scary because then if I hit him with a drag down, he immediately dies. So I'm like, okay, he'll probably double jump. Of course, I've played Leo a couple times before this, and I know that even with Joker, he likes to do high tether recovery, so he goes for double jump, and I just guess, I'm like, okay, you're probably going to use your up B high. Because that just makes sense, because I've played you, and it's technically a lot better to do this. If I'm not ready for it, it's a lot harder to deal with, but I guessed right, and that's just my knowledge of Leo, and just honestly, most tether players will recover like this. So he goes for double jump up B, again, just to restart the whole situation. I'm like, okay, you double jumped, and then I just place a double jump back air in the spot that makes absolute sense that he's going to up B here. So now again, he doesn't have his double jump, he doesn't have his tether bounce, all he has is directional air dodge, which Leo does, and then I just place my body in the intersecting line of where Leo is trying to drift and where I can go. So then I just back air him, and he dies literally, this was 0%. Again, let's watch the full clip. So back air, up air, back air. He has to do something, I recover. I see he double jumps, I just guess the high up B, and then he air dodges, and then I back air him. Sometimes it's really that simple. Of course, there's more stuff to edgeguarding like ledge trumping and two framing, but honestly, the offstage edgeguard is so much more important in most matchups that's what you really need to focus on. Especially, I mean, there's probably about 80% of the matchups in the game where if you get a good back air, they might die. Like off the top of my head, the characters that are hard to edgeguard are like Samus, Yoshi's pretty easy to edge guard unless they use their double jump, but then you can just juggle them, so that's like a 50-50. Game & Watch is hard, Pac-Man is hard, Pikachu, like the mirror match, is hard. Pichu is also hard, but you typically just kind of try to double jump back air around and hope that you hit him trying to grab the ledge. Steve is really difficult unless they don't have iron. Zero Suit can be annoying. Like against certain characters, some that I'm not listing here, like Inkling, they have a good recovery and you're probably not going to get a kill from edgeguarding an Inkling, but then you still do like drop off back airs to hit their up B like 4 or 5 times, give them 25%, and then eventually just ledge trap them when you're not sure if you can hit another one. So even if you're not getting kills, a lot of Pikachu's edgeguards can still make your opponent recover in specific ways, and you have just already got a lot of percent. And then sometimes you can still get a spike, and of course if you hit a spike at like upwards of 40%, most characters are just dead. I think the most difficult and nuanced thing about edgeguarding with Pikachu is definitely using Thunder, but again, it's basically just committing early to a low edgeguard attempt, and then if your opponent double jumps or does a higher recovery, just understanding, hey, you're gonna get spiked here, you're gonna die, and it happens against, like, it's really easy, because I'm super used to it against a lot of characters, but it is definitely a more nuanced thing, and even other top Pikachu players I feel like aren't as good at using Thunder as I am. And again, one thing that's really important to remember is understanding how the combination of the fall and airspeed of the characters basically creates their lines. If a character is a floaty character, you know, the time that it takes them to get from like here to here, right, on like this line is going to be pretty slow, right? But if you have a fast falling character like Fox, even if they have the exact same airspeed, he'll get from here to here in the time that the floaty character gets from like the top to here. So understanding when your opponent will get to whatever places that you want to hit with a Thunder Jolt with your body is very much dependent on the fall and airspeed of that character. So again, assuming that you want to get a Thunder Jolt out, right? I'll draw this a little closer. Assuming you want to hit them with a Thunder Jolt, basically, if it is a slow falling character, you need to Thunder Jolt when they are definitely below where the Thunder Jolt will come out, because Pikachu's kind of in the mid-range of like fall speed. He's not very floaty, but he's not a fast faller for sure. So when they get like below the full hop height is when you as Pikachu want to Thunder Jolt, right? Because you want to hit them here, but they have to be pretty low because they're going to be falling slower than the Thunder Jolt. Against fast fallers, you want to have your Thunder Jolt out when they are above where the Thunder Jolt is going to be, right? Because they will get to this intersecting point a lot faster for characters like Fox or Roy or Chrom. And for mid-falling characters, you basically want the height of where the Thunder Jolt comes out at to basically be when you shoot your Thunder Jolt when they are at this height, because you will basically be falling at the same exact time. And that's basically how you want to time that. This understanding when to jump out because of their fall and airspeed is really important, because if you jump out too early, then they get to react and like double jump higher, and you're already in a bad spot, especially against floaty characters. And if you jump out too late, obviously they can get around the Thunder Jolt, get here before the Thunder Jolt even gets to where it needs to go, and then it basically didn't do anything. Granted, sometimes in this position, that's still fine, because then you, as the Pikachu, can kind of just fall on top of them and still intersect them with your body. Hence why Thunder Jolt is a broken move for edgeguarding. So make sure, if anything, you're going to jump out late, because you can recognize, oh, I jumped out late, time to just retreat and come back to the ledge and ledge trap, whereas jumping out early will almost certainly guarantee you miss the edgeguard and you're in a much worse situation. That's why sometimes edgeguarding floaty characters can be a little scary, like Rosalina, because if you jump out too early, she can just go like, boom, and just go all the way across the stage, and you're somewhere like down here, and you just miss, and then now Rosalina has stage control. So like that and Thunder are probably going to be the two trickiest things when it comes to edgeguarding, but over time, you do learn to get a lot more comfortable with it.